Good afternoon and happy Thursday to everyone out there in webinar world. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be discussing red flags when working with a PPC agency for our topic today. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in. So first of all, we'll do a quick introduction for your presenters today. First up is going to be myself, Kayla Kurtz. I am the paid search consultant here at Hannafin Marketing. I'm also a blogger at PPC Hero, and I'm kind of obsessive about my Twitter, so feel free to add me and follow me and tweet at me. And I've got with me Sam Owen. Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm an account manager at Hannafin Marketing as well. I've been working here for just over a year. And I'm also a blogger at PPC Hero, and if you would like to get in touch with me on Twitter, you can reach me at SamOwenPPC.
Awesome. So let's really get into exactly what this topic is going to be about entirely. What we've really discussed a lot in-house lately is that it's not necessarily easy to know if your relationships from an agency to a client standpoint are working well. And especially when you start with a new agency, there's a lot of curiosity about what kind of questions the agency should be asking you. And then likewise, what kind of questions you should be asking of your new or upcoming agency. Then we're also going to go into a little bit about whether you feel like your account manager is providing the kind of feedback that you need. And what if your account manager feels like you're not providing that information back to them as well? It's more of a mutual feeling than you had potentially thought. So what we really want to do here is we're not trying to say that the client is right or that the agency is right all the time, 100%. What we really want to have happen here is everybody on the same page, getting along, passing back and forth information as needed, and truly just working towards the overall goal of that particular paid search account, which is going to be sales, revenue, lead volume, things of that nature.
And one thing I've learned is that since moving to Indiana, you can't go a day without Larry Bird being relevant, which is probably why he's been included on the slide deck.
So maybe I'm a Hoosier, judge me. Awesome. So specifically, these are going to be kind of some of the things that we go into today. And these are those red flags that if these things start coming up, we're not saying cut bait, choose a new agency, let go of your client. Certainly that's not necessarily the case, but what we are saying is these things should make you ask a few more questions potentially. So things when metrics are being used to hide overall performance gains. If anybody's making a guarantee on results, if you've got one point of contact with your agency, if reporting changes and frequency of that reporting or kind of reporting changes. These are things that should make you stand up and think to yourself, is everything going truly as good as I think that it is? And is this potentially a good time to reset and get back on the same level playing field as we were potentially when we first got started? So before we jump into the full content, we want to really encourage everyone to join in the conversation today. We've started the hashtag ThinkPPC on Twitter, and we'd love to have you interact with us. Let us know what you think about what we're discussing. Of course, if you've got any questions, feel free to send those through Twitter as well. Then we've always got the webinar question box that's there available for you that you can send questions through as well. All right, Sam, are you ready to get started?
Sure am.
Awesome. Okay, first, let's take a couple of audience poll questions. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we'll see if these roll out like we want them to today. But the first question is, how long have you been in PPC? And the responses we are giving you is less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years. So we'll give everybody a couple of seconds to Okay, awesome. So it looks like we've got some results popping up for us.
So how long have you been in PPC, Kayla?
I've been at right around 2 years and a quarter or so. So 2 years, 4 months. I don't think this thing's gonna work. Let's see if this. Oh no, I don't think it's working, guys. All right, well, we're just gonna move on then past these poll questions. No big deal.
Well, we'll
answer. So I've been in paid search for a little over 2 years. Sam, what about you?
So just under 4 years now. So we're BNC.
Yep.
I'm sure there's some experts with D out there who
Oh, absolutely.
don't need to hear us ramble on. But.
Right. They're going to listen anyway. That's why we love them. The second question we were going to ask everyone was sort of how you manage your accounts currently, whether that be by yourself, if you're a part of a team, kind of like Sam and I are, if you outsource that account management to a team similar to Hannafin's, or if you're completely rethinking sort of how that process goes all together. I would say that it's probably a pretty even split in terms of account sizes and whether they choose to handle those in-house, outsourced to another agency. And I would also say that there's a lot of opportunity for a brand to make their decision and decide one version of management is good for them and then still come back and renegotiate that and potentially look to the other side. Sam, what do you think?
So I've worked in-house and for an agency, and it really depends how you want to set it up. Of course, there's the issue of resources, so maybe you don't have time to fully devote efforts to PPC like an agency would.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you're an expert, then doing it in-house can be, give yourself all that time every month, really able to dig in and look through the data and some of the things that you might not have access to at an agency, like the back end side of things
Mm-hmm.
or the web dev side of things, can be really good in-house. So I definitely recommend an agency if you're struggling with time or you want someone to come in and be able to really look through your stuff. And we have a huge collection of really intelligent people here, so you can kind of draw on all those resources in an agency, whereas it might just be you in-house. But there's kind of the two sides of it, and I'm going to try and keep this webinar fairly unbiased and say it's not clear-cut which is better. It's just there's different pros and cons each way.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So since the silly polls aren't working, we'll just go ahead and move on to the good stuff. So again, what we're going to uncover here are going to be 14 red flags that may not necessarily mean it's time to choose a new agency. It may not necessarily mean that they're trying to keep anything from you in particular, but these are just things to consider. And if more than one of them start coming up, maybe start asking a few more questions. So the first one is going to be, if your agency doesn't give you administrative account access or access to your account and the reporting period. So I see this come up a lot during our sales process with prospective clients. We do a complimentary solutions blueprint on any accounts that are coming in and potentially looking for help from our agency. If they're spending more than $15,000 a month, we'll get in and basically do a pre-diagnosis of the account to find out where the opportunities are, and maybe let them know that they are truly knocking it out of the park and they just don't realize it. So one of the things that entails is I've got to get read-only access to their accounts, and more often than not, I actually find out that they don't physically have the ability to grant me that access to their account at all because they're on read-only access themselves. Or they don't even have a login anymore. So their agency set things up for them and they get their reports, of course, but they don't have a login for their AdWords account because it was started from scratch by the agency. Some agencies, that's just their standard operating procedure. So maybe ask them if they can change that and give you administrative access, give you access to everything, period. I don't think that it's necessarily abnormal that this comes up, but it's something that you should ask for because that's your account. And ultimately, you're going to be responsible for any of the ad spend that comes out of it and any potential compliance issues down the road. So I think that's a really good one too. If you don't have this administrative access to all levels of your account, definitely check in with your agency and find out if you can get that changed.
And I think one of the keys as well here is that really when you have an agency, you still want to own your own account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
this is, if you go to an agency and they say, we're going to build your account, but it's going to be under our name, we'll pay for it. And when you go, you don't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a red flag. I don't know how many people still do that kind of thing. It used to happen more.
Yeah.
But you really want just someone to come in and look after your property rather than give them everything.
Absolutely. Just something to keep an eye out for.
Cool. So the next thing you really want is to be, for your agency to be focused on specific metrics rather than, you want to make sure that they aren't focused on specific metrics rather than your account performance as a whole. So this is something that comes up a lot. And I've seen it with some people I've worked with. So they're not at Hannafin, but at other agencies. So they focus really on one thing. They're like, okay, average position is going to be the key. And that's the way they kind of work. And you think, wait a minute, that's not why I'm coming to an agency. What I really want here is for my business to be stronger. So the focus really should be on your business goals. So whether that's revenue or leads or even quality leads rather than just leads, that should be what your agency talks to you about. If they don't mention it, if they're just like click-through rate's better this month, every single month, or average position's good, then you start to think to yourself, wait a minute, do they care about my business? And if you're too focused on those metrics, you should be experiencing pushback from your agency. So one example is we have a client who really just wants us to focus on conversion numbers. And it's actually wrong for them to focus on that. What we're focusing on is their revenue, so we're making them more money every month. And the real key is that we push back to them and say, hey, we could just do exactly what you want, but actually what we want long term is for your business to be as strong as possible. So if you don't receive that pushback from an agency, then that's probably a red flag. I mean, you could be using the perfect metrics, but make sure they're kind of really honed in on what's best for your business.
Yeah, it's a really great point. Moving to red flag number 3, if your agency doesn't necessarily allow you direct access to your account manager, whether it be by email or phone. I've definitely seen situations where the client is capable of reaching someone at the agency, but if they call and ask to speak with their account manager direct, the person who's in the account every day logging in, making changes, they're sort of given a pause. And whoever they are speaking with says, I'll let them know that you called and I'll have them get in touch with you. So it's a bit of one-way communication. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that there's something terribly wrong that's going on, but it's nice to know that you can reach out to your account director or manager and speak to them in that moment when you need to, even if it is just to shoot them an email and let them know that you're thinking about something, you've got an idea or something along those lines. I think that it can be the tendency to assume that there's potential in this situation for that paid search work to be outsourced even beyond what the client perceives to be their agency. So again, just making sure that communication and understanding is very thorough, that, okay, if that paid search manager doesn't actually work at that agency, they're not in the building every single day, let the client know that. The more transparency, the better. You're going to keep yourself from getting out of the weeds or getting into the weeds, potentially down the road if and when they find out and you weren't forthcoming with that information.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily mean you call me and I'm in a meeting.
Yeah,
and,
right.
If I don't pick up, that's a red flag. But what it means is that I'm going to get back to you within, solid time frame. So that day or within 24 hours at least.
Yep.
If you email, I'm going to respond to you and kind of talk through it. So that's kind of something to look out for. But yeah, definitely not to set a red flag if you just call and they're not right there.
Absolutely.
Cool. So another one is just if you have no way to accurately track work completed in your account. So if the agency team isn't necessarily giving you detail on the actions they're taking in the account when they report performance. So I want to kind of start this with a caveat. So it's not always going to be the case that you're going to hear every single thing people do in the account every week. That's just not true. I'm not going to necessarily tell you every single bit of data I pull out of an SQR or every minor bid change I make. That's not going to happen. But I will give you some feedback as to the process of what I'm doing. So when we start with new clients, we'll have like a roadmap for all the changes we're going to make. When we talk on client calls, we're going to say, this is what we worked on last week. This is what we work on next week. If you're just hearing metrics and report numbers from us, then that's probably something you want to tweak in your mind. Like, okay, so numbers are good. Is that just seasonality? And are they getting a little lazy and saying, okay, performance is good, so I don't have to do anything? You want to really hear from us, okay, we've worked on restructuring your keywords, ad copy testing, etc. You want to hear what exactly has been going on. And like I said, you don't want to find out every single minor detail, but have that information come to you. And so you can look in things like your change history in AdWords to see stuff's going on. That's not always going to be full. So if I'm building something out in Excel, which is like a 2-week project for a new account, it's not necessary that because I haven't done anything in that week in your change history, I'm not working very hard. But it is a red flag if you look in there and nothing ever happens. So that's just something to be really aware of, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point, is that, I wouldn't run to the change history, because sometimes the change, not only can those reports be incredibly extensive and show you every individual bid change that was made in some situations, and in that case, it just becomes difficult to even manage and read through. But I like to use it more of as a second check. So if there are other red flags that have been triggered, then maybe go look at the change history to verify a few things, but certainly not the go-to method. Which was going to bring us to our third live poll question. And again, since those aren't working, Sam and I will just chat through this for a quick second. But considering, how you can track PPC account work in a variety of different ways, Sam, what do you think? Is it Excel spreadsheets? Is it Basecamp or another project management software? Is it change history? Is it something else entirely? What's the best method that you found for not only tracking your paid search work so that you know where you've been and where you're headed, but also so that you can pass it along to the client as well?
So mine's probably a mixture of B and D here. Normally, depending on how much time my client has or wants to talk to me, I really like to use Basecamp. So for those of you not familiar with it, it's just a project management tool you can use. You can set to-dos, you can add messages. So we have on there this is just an example of one of my clients. We have two lists on there. One is my to-do list, one is their to-do list, and they can add stuff to mine and I can add stuff to theirs. And then when we have a call every week, we can talk through what's been done. I can see what they've ticked off, what I've ticked off. So in terms of just action items, that's really great. And then I can add a message to say, I've uploaded this. These are the bid changes I've made. Should they want to go and dig into that? And then D really is just weekly calls. So if we're talking about tracking between a client and an agency,
Sure.
That's normally it. We'll send the reports and we'll talk through all the things that have happened. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that I was just going to say that I think it's an even mix, really, and it is not only potentially account specific, how you need to track things and to what level, whether the client's going to have to-dos that they're also meeting on you with, then, definitely something like a Basecamp is going to be more beneficial. So I think that that's a great call. I think probably a lot of our viewers would say the same thing, that it may be actually a combination of 1, 2, 3, 4, or more, even more different methods to thoroughly track everything that's going on. All right, that brings us to red flag number 5, which is that your entire sales process with that agency took place over email. Of course, we're very busy people, both on the agency and client side, so it can potentially be easier in certain situations to have as many conversations as possible over email so that everyone can kind of get back to that conversation when they've got a few moments and they're not particularly set to this 30-minute block of time. However, each account, each situation is very unique and different, and it can't necessarily be handled with the same line of questions that can be copy-pasted through, a very specific email process. Even more than that, and I think that this is the true key, is that trust and communication are crucially important with a PPC agency and client partnership. And I say partnership very specifically. It is both sides really accepting the overall performance of this account is going to affect the bottom line for that business, and everyone has to be on board. So it becomes a little bit difficult for me to understand how you can have those conversations completely over email and know that the agency understands where you're coming from and that you understand what the client truly needs. Again, I also mentioned that we do that solutions blueprint process, and of course, that's going to require a little bit of a deeper look into going through that with them and reviewing that actual document before we even move to the next step. Because if we don't have enough to offer them, or they're not necessarily ready to move forward, we want to address that. And again, I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable having that conversation over email. I'm also a people person, so I'm constantly trying to get people on the phone to talk to me. So it could just very well be that you've got an agency that's incredibly efficient over email and they want to roll that sales process through. But if you get through the sales process, it took place entirely over email, and then another one of these red flags come up, maybe start asking a few more questions, like I had said.
So this is kind of an interesting one for me. I don't know if any of you out there have worked with or been hounded by SEO agencies. Guaranteeing results is kind of one of those huge red flags to me, at least in SEO, and then also when I think about it in PPC too. So if someone tells you they're going to get you a click-through rate of X, or they're going to get you a certain number of conversions, instantly be worried.
Yeah.
So, I'm not talking about the kind of qualitative guarantees, like they'll improve your account structure and they guarantee to work on your account for a certain amount of time, that's fine. But if someone tells you, we'll definitely get you in, X click-through rate percentage, X conversions, then you want to just think in your head, okay, how are they guaranteeing that? How do they know that certain competitors aren't going to change what they're doing? So again, it's like an easy sales tactic that's just something to be super wary of, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best success I've ever had explaining the reasons why Hannafin does it, we don't give guaranteed results, is that we're definitely going to get you this many more conversions, is because we're not Google and we're not Bing. So they could change the game tomorrow and we have no way of sometimes knowing that that's coming, and we definitely don't have the ability to keep them from rolling those changes out. So just it's a very dangerous road to start driving down. So like Sam said, just keep your eyes peeled and be hesitant. This is one that, again, I experience a lot coming from the sales side. If the fee looks too good to be true, it probably is. It's with most things in life, right? I get a lot of this, this agency is going to do work for me at $50 an hour. And that works for certain agencies and even for certain accounts. What we find is that you can't set a certain number of hours and say that this is going to get the job done each month consistently over and over. Some months take way more hours in an account and some months take less. I also, this is just my rule, my standard rule is that if they claim they can give you the entire PPC kitchen sink for less than 4 figures a month, I'd start to be hesitant. Because you're starting to look at, they're barely making any ability to grow their own business for themselves at that point, right? So you're a smart business owner, so are they at a certain degree. Are they going to be doing paid search work for you? Absolutely, right? They're contracted. They are going to be doing work. I would just be hesitant to think that there's going to be a great deal of work, and they're certainly not going to be delivering that full front to back paid search picture.
So one that I find as an account manager is just, if I weren't to ask you for back-end data, that would be a big red flag. So this isn't going to apply to all of you, obviously. It kind of depends on your industry, but let's say an example I had was a law firm we were working with. Now, if I'm just running the PPC and we're kind of disconnected, I'm just sending you what AdWords calls conversions, then that's not the same as you getting quality clients signing up. So if I'm not asking, wait a minute, how many clients are you getting? Then I don't really care about your business. So another example of this is we have a education client, and we get from them every month a detailed list of their final enrollments, and we spend a lot of time pulling that data and rolling it back in with our AdWords data, so we can say, okay, these keywords actually bring you guys quality leads, and these keywords are a waste of time, and these campaigns are a waste of time. So if you have that kind of setup and you're not being asked what your data is, or you're not being, it's not discussed with you, then you can start to think, okay, so what are they even looking at? Do they understand the fundamentals of my business?
Mm-hmm. I think this leads back to that one red flag we had at the very beginning, which is that there's this focus on a click-through rate or an average position number rather than that back-end total final ultimate metric. So again, if, like Sam said, if they're not necessarily focused on your bottom line, what are they focused on? Cool. This one is one of my favorites. If the agency can't or won't provide references. Now, I will say straight up front, there are absolutely situations where, as an agency, we've not necessarily supplied references to a prospect right out of the gate. Maybe they're looking to have us do some white label work for them and they're an agency themselves. I don't necessarily want to put them in contact with my current clients, right? That's just, and generally speaking, they understand that. What we do provide in those situations is as many case studies as we possibly can. Give them the opportunity to chat with our director of paid search and get a little bit more of a dig into what our strategies look like. Possibly talk to who their account manager would be for a few moments before we get the onboarding process started so they feel comfortable. I think that as long as you've got some additional evidence to back it up, there are going to be situations where it's not in either party's best interest to either call on those references or give them out. However, I would say if you're in the 100K a month spend range and you're asking for a couple of client references and the agency won't give it to you, that's the red flag we're talking about. Because they're claiming that they're capable of managing that spend for you, and at that point, you're entrusting in them a lot. So it's only fair that they trust you as well with that contact information to reach out to a couple of their clients. If they've done it the right way, they've reached out to those clients ahead of time to let them know you were going to be reaching out. So again, it is a case-by-case basis. There are going to be situations where, like I said, an agency may not be in the position to want to forward that information along. But if and when you get to the point where you can and you are comfortable, it's better to send it and to ask for it as well. And then if you can't have those references, ask for some additional complimentary information to explain that expertise.
So this kind of ties in with what I was saying before. It's ever so slightly different. So it's when your agency takes over your account, what you want to know is from the very beginning that they're working towards what you need them to be working towards. So if it's just kind of like a slow start and you don't hear anything and they don't ask you, okay, so what's your key goal here? Are you looking for revenue? Are you looking for free signups? Are you looking for quality leads? Are you looking for just overall leads? Is this a branding exercise? Then that's again, it's kind of harping on to what I said before, but it's just, do they really care about what I'm focused on? So we had this is a separate law firm client who they had their important metric was quality leads. And just because when we came in, we were focused on just overall leads, getting into them. And there was some miscommunication there. So, what really should have happened is that we should have nailed right down from the start exactly what we're focused on. And that's 100% what I do now. So I think you just want to make sure that that's kind of always there.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely, that was a learning opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Awesome. So red flag number 11 is going to be that they're a full service marketing agency. Again, I want to put this caveat in there. Those do exist. There are agencies that are gigantic and they've got basically full PPC, SEO, web dev agencies within the one umbrella agency. But I find a lot that people are, when they get to the point of calling PPC agencies specifically, it's because they're looking for paid search assistance. They're not necessarily looking for someone to help out with the SEO or the social side, just PPC. So if you go to an agency that offers this full service marketing scheme and you're needing a specialist, that could potentially be a red flag, only because I have seen situations where the focus after the first couple of months starts to push to how to pull that client into those additional services, as opposed to just focusing on what they came to you for in the beginning. And again, I'll say as an agency on our side, if we're working with a client and we're doing some great stuff with their PPC, but we see some opportunities for SEO, we used to have our toe in that particular little pond as well. If we see something like that, we're going to let them know that there could be a potential opportunity to go seek that out. We will give them contacts that we have for other agencies that offer those services, but that's the end of the conversation to the most part until they sign that SEO agency and have us start linking up and communicating to share our ideas and thoughts. We're focused on PPC. That's what we do. So, we used to do that. We used to be more of a full service marketing agency. And what we decided is that it was more important to us to be that expert paid search agency that the largest clients in the field could come to, versus being able to offer those other services that we knew there were bigger players out there in the market. We're doing them a little bit better than we were. So let's just focus in. Those agencies may be able to do it all for you. I definitely don't doubt that they can, but they're not going to be doing those at an expert level, all within one house.
So the next thing is just agencies that really focus on increasing your budget or increasing how much you have to pay them without presenting a plan or a reason why. And we kind of discussed this yesterday. It was an interesting, debate that came up. And really, we wanted to say, let's not kid anyone here. As an agency, we would like as much money as possible for the job we do. But what we really want to do is keep you as a client for a long, long time. So we can blow budgets out of the water and get paid, good amounts for a couple of months, But if you're not happy, if you're not making money, then you're going to leave pretty quick. So what you want is an agency who'll come to you and say, okay, we think you can expand your business this way, and this is what we think it's going to do. So you could spend, if you're spending 100,000 right now, you could spend 200,000 and double your revenue. So that's the kind of approach you want from your agency. You really don't want, oh, we're going to push some more money into Facebook this month just because we think we'll do well. You really want, okay, we've seen great results from similar clients, and we're going to do this, and this is the test we're going to run, and if the test works well, then we're going to expand your business to do this, and we're constantly focused on your key metrics, and that's how we're going to do it. So just something to watch out for, I think. Like if you're some of you will have hard set budgets, in which case that's fine. But if you don't, if you're just e-commerce and as long as it's making money, spend. If they don't kind of talk to you about that, then that's a red flag at least. It's not necessarily a bad sign, but just something to watch for.
Absolutely. Sam, I'm going to interject with a question for you. How often would you say that you approach a client and you've got that plan laid out, right? Where this is the opportunity I see in terms of increasing budget. This is the return that I feel like could be there. This is what we want to test out. Can we do it? And have them say no, right? So if you present it in that way, how often is there still a much deeper conversation versus them understanding really what your purpose is?
So I think this is interesting. I don't have exact percentages for you,
Sure.
but I think it depends on the type of client I'm working with. So some of them will be very traditional and they'll have set budgets and they'll need to, I'll be working with, for example, their marketing director, and their marketing director will have to go and present and argue a case for a budget.
Sure.
So, and that might be 6 to 12 months down the line.
Right.
So they've been allocated $30,000 a month, and they can't get $45,000 by me just asking and saying, hey, I found these other great sources for you to make some more money.
Absolutely.
Which can be frustrating, but also on the other hand, there are lots of other companies where I can go and say, okay, this is the argument, and if I frame it well, and if we have reasons for it, and we're not just going to say, we'll spend a bit more and make some more money on PPC, then they can be pretty flexible. So it's probably about half of the time it's one, half the other, but it really depends on the type of company you're working with.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I definitely see it being a situation where if they're the kind of organization that's got those marketing budgets set out months and months in advance, maybe each quarter gets its own set budget, you're definitely going to be looking at a potentially longer timeline, no matter how good your argument is.
But again, I mean, if you are a marketing director, you want an agency that will back you up with the stats, so that can produce good reports that you can then take to your boss and say, okay, this is why we need X amount of money in marketing, and this is how it's going to make the company more money. So.
I agree. All right, moving on to red flag number 13. And this a little bit feeds into, again, what we were talking about earlier with who you're contacting. So if your agency gives you a single point of contact, this is something to maybe be a little bit questionable about. And again, I'll say this used to be Hannafin's method to the madness, was you get your person. You have your one account manager, and they are running your account for you. So any and everything you want to know, they're in charge of. What happens if that account manager leaves for one reason or another? They could just get sick for a few days. They could go out of town on vacation. They could move to a different agency because they want to live on a different part, like in a different part of the country. Hannafin itself is in a college town. So we've had a lot of account managers that we get, pretty quickly out of college, and then they are with a spouse or someone else here in town, and they finish up school, and then they find a job, and they have to leave us. And we hate that, but that's the nature of the game. So if you've got that one single point of contact and they leave, oftentimes the client feels a little bit like they have to retrain their new contact and whoever that new account manager is going to be. So what we did is we saw that as being an issue, and we decided to try out more of a tiered method. So you've got multiple levels of contacts. It's a bit of a phone tree, right? In case of an emergency, in case one person is out, you've got 3 other people you can reach out to. So there's always going to be, and this is the Hannafin method, but there's always going to be your salesperson, whoever brought you in the door in the first place. Worst comes to worst, and you can't reach out to anyone on your team for some reason, Tom or I are going to be here to answer that phone call. On the actual account management team side, you've got Jeff as the director of paid search, Christine is the client manager, one of our fantastically awesome account managers who is hard assigned to that account. Then they're also going to have some fluid account managers at their disposal when and if big projects come up, or if they need to go out of town, stuff still needs to be completed. You're also going to get a CRO guy. So you've got multiple different people you can reach out to. And if you've got a question and it is an emergency and someone's out of town, out of the day, out of the office that day sick, that single point of contact can sometimes keep you a little bit in a hostage situation. So making sure that even if you do have the one account manager, there's at least someone else you can reach out to in the event that they're not available to discuss your account. All right, Sam, this is the last one.
Pretty exciting. So the last red flag is just suspicious timelines. And I'll tell you, as an account manager, if I want to do really great work for you, it's not going to happen in 24 hours. So the thing to really watch out for is just someone, and I want to, this is very caveat as well, but if they either report, oh, as you say, I'd like you to do something, they say, sure, and it's done in 2 hours, or they say, sure, and it's done in 6 months' time, those are both big red flags. So if you want a big project done, thoroughly researched, analyzed, not just quick bid changes that they do because you asked them to, then you're looking at, a week turnaround, a couple of weeks turnaround for some of these things. If they're building out your account and they've done it in 2 hours, are they building out your account specific to you? Or are they just using a simple template that's, they haven't researched what's best practice in your industry or with your particular business? So those are things you want to look out for. And again, like I said, a caveat, someone could just be doing some really great quick work for you. It's not necessarily a bad sign, but it's just something to watch out for. If they're always, it'll be done in a long time, or they do it in 2 hours and it's really quick and it's not the best work, then those are just things to watch for, I think. So
absolutely. All right, here comes the fun part. Live Q&A time. We've already gotten a lot of really awesome questions. So Sam, if it's okay with you, I'll just facilitate those and then you can answer and I'll answer and we'll bump back and forth on them. Is that cool?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, so the first question, someone asked when you're giving administrative access to the client, do you have problems with them making random changes and how do you deal with these clients? Sam, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we've had clients in the past who make changes within their accounts and don't tell us about them. So it's tricky, right? Because anytime you reset, say you do a round of bid changes, or you're running some ad tests and you find that some of them are paused and you don't know about it, then it's actually going to make your work worse, because firstly, if they don't tell you, you're not going to catch it. But then secondly, they might be doing things in the account that aren't right. So it is tricky, but it's one of those things. So I would much rather, it's my client's account, right? So at the end of the day, it's what they want to do.
Right.
So generally I deal with it by asking them to keep me informed. So that might be setting up Basecamp that we can both work through and saying, hey, I understand you want to make changes. When you do, drop me an email and we can discuss them, or add it to Basecamp and I can see what's happened. I can review it and we can talk about it on our calls. So those are kind of the key ways I deal with those things. I definitely think that's a much better option than having them locked out and getting frustrated.
Absolutely. I think you're right. I think communication is the key. You never want to tell a client that's their account, and especially if they've been the one managing it, right, for a lot of years. They may very well know stuff that they've not thought to put into words to share with you, but they know their account needs. I think that setting up a Basecamp type structure where it's absolutely, let's just make sure we share all of that together. That's going to be the best way to get to the finish line together. Cool. So next question.
So this is probably for you, right, Kayla?
Yeah,
so
probably.
Isn't a percentage of spend fee likely to cause the same issue to encourage extra expenditure or poor performance?
Yes, and I think that's what Sam and I were kind of trying to allude to before, which is that you set up a percentage of spend model. That's the Hannafin model. That's what we're set up on. You set up a percentage of spend, and your assumption from the client side is that, they're going to be trying to increase my spend because that's going to make them more money. What we know is that if that were our method and that were the case and we were just driving spend, you're going to leave much, much sooner than if we were only scaling up when it made sense for you. So that's the difference in a partnership versus having an agency run your paid search accounts. We don't see increasing your spend this month to get that extra management fee this month as worth it from keeping us from that place long-term later down the road. The percentage of spend fee, It comes up a lot. Why can't you do a performance-based model? Same reasons we talked about before. We can't guarantee conversions. We can't guarantee that your site doesn't go down and keeps us from being able to push through conversions. We don't know that Google's not going to make some changes to an algorithm that could change the game. So percentage of spend just keeps things lined up where if you've got the kind of agency that's truly partnering with you, that spend is only going up when you're ready and when your bottom line is going to come up with it. Great. And there was actually a question about a rough idea of our fee structures if we've got minimums. And I don't want to put on my sales girl pants too much right now, but I would love to work with all of you people. So a real quick glimpse behind the curtain. Our enterprise level plans are set at 12% of spend. We've also got some Acquisio fees and as well as conversion rate optimization fees. That's our kitchen sink PPC management plan. Typically that's for accounts that are spending more than 15 to 20,000 because there is a minimum management fee that's built into that because again, it's kitchen sink time, and we don't stop giving you the kitchen sink just because you're spending between that 15 to 20K mark. Then below that 15 to 20K segment, we've got a different small business plan that's a flat $500 fee plus 15% of whatever your ad spend is. That does give you access to Acquisio, not necessarily the entire kitchen sink, maybe just the wash half, but it's definitely a tiered structure that allows for ramping up in a best practices manner. And again, only when it's producing revenue and sales on the back end. But anybody who's got more specific questions about any of our pricing structures or models, absolutely reach out to me. Love to chat more. So the next question, we'll get off the fee stuff. The next question is it logical to hire an agency to manage both SEM and SEO channels?
So I guess we can both kind of throw an answer in here, Kayla. But the first thing I'll say is really you just want, logical in my mind is you want the best person managing your SEM and you want the best person managing your SEO. Mm-hmm. So if it's, an agency that has separate wings and they're experts in everything, then sure. But, one of the things that helps us to stand out for PPC is that we have our whole team. We're all PPC only, PPC experts. We close down our office one day a month and we do PPC training. We have in-depth looks. We'll build presentations. We'll talk to each other. We'll train each other. So that's what you're getting with a specific agency. You're getting access to not only your account manager who's an expert, but a team of experts all in that one field who train each other, who are ready to cover at any given moment. And then if you have if you have the same size agency and the account manager who does both for you, then that's going to be kind of, you're kind of diluting your talent pool. So let's not get this wrong and say there are plenty of fantastic SEO and PPC agencies out there. But what I think is key is I don't think it matters if you hire one or the other, but just get the best possible people in to do both of those tasks for you.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say that I've seen the most success come out of separate agencies managing each. But again, I don't think that that's a rule. I think that that's just how it's tended to work out. And I've also seen those situations where they're in different agencies actually work not as well because the two agencies won't talk. So that's really what it comes down to is if in order to get those two marketing schemes on the same page, you've got to put them in one house, that may be the better mode of the madness for you.
Well, on our kickoff calls with our clients, one of the first things I'll ask is someone running your SEO and can you give me a contact for them and we can discuss what measures they're doing. So I've had calls just myself and their SEO manager from another agency without the client involved, just so we can keep up to date with what each other are doing. So I think that's the key. I'll always say communication.
Oh, totally. Awesome. All right, next question. Somebody said, and this makes sense, and I apologize, I should have been clearer. Someone said that they're a solo entrepreneur PPC consultant. So that multi-tiered process of having lots of different contacts wouldn't really allow them to, quote unquote, provide service based on what we were saying. If your client knows that, they know you're a one-man shop, you tell them that, right? You give them that information and they've signed on with you because they know that and they're okay. They know you know your stuff enough that they'll give you their account. That certainly doesn't keep you from being able to provide service. Also in those situations, that's you're the one person doing, and that's all you do is paid search all the time, each and every day. So you can make it work. I think, again, this is always going to come back to communication. Don't give your client the false understanding that you've got a team that's assisting you if it is just you, or if they come to you with a project that needs a potential quick turnaround and they think you've got the hands for it and you don't, then you're going to have an awkward conversation. So I think you're still more than capable of providing service as a one-man shop. Just make sure that the client is aware and that you react accordingly. Next question. How many of these red flags would have to go up before you might start reconsidering your agency? Oh, goodness. If there are any agency people sitting in, I promise I'm not trying to bait anybody on this. My thoughts are, if it's more than one, at least start asking some questions, or look at another one and make sure that that one's not happening. I would say certainly if you've got 4 or 5 of the things that are happening on this list, it's absolutely time to sit down and start reconsidering. So there's different levels of how you react, whether you just start asking some more poking, prodding questions, requesting some additional information, or whether you actually go back to the drawing board and potentially choose a new agency.
Right. And these are flags. They're not
right.
They're just there to guide you. So you could have a lot of these red flags, and you go to your agency, and if they can answer each of these points and they're like legit answers, then it might be fine, to be honest. So I think it's more use these to start the discussion and find out what's really going on.
Fantastic. Couple more questions. These are kind of Hannafin team specific, so thank you. We appreciate that. The first one is, how many qualified account managers do we have on staff right now? I think we're floating at right around 15 account managers, 15 to 18 at the moment, all of which are certified through Google and Bing. So our team total is 25, I believe, is what we're at, 25 or 26. That's everybody that encompasses sales, our own internal marketing, and everybody from the administrative team as well. So 15 to 18 account managers, and they're all really fantastic and qualified. So thank you for that. Sam and his team are really great.
Thanks, Kayla.
Hey, no problem. All right, then the last one is how we go about learning a client's business model and their competitors. And this is, I would say that this is actually another red flag, right? If you are working with an agency that doesn't ask you those questions about your business, doesn't really try to understand it, just says, hey, give me your website, your URL, and the login, and I'll handle it. I would go out on a limb and say that we've probably gotten the most insightful information from our clients and about their business when we go on our on-site visits. We try to visit most of our clients at least once a quarter, and sometimes we get to go and actually see their warehouses, go see the actual factory and how it functions, and we learn ways that we can promote their business that we wouldn't have known if we hadn't actually gone and become familiar. That's a pretty in-depth version, right? Going on site to see the actual client's business in action. But
yeah, I mean, so we kind of have a process, and it comes through all of it. So the first thing, and we're just talking to kick off here about the client's needs. So that will be, we'll have a kickoff call. So through the sales process, Kayla will be dealing with all these questions and back and forth with the client and finding out about their account. She'll have done the solutions blueprint, but we'll have our kickoff call, and really there, you'll have, say for example, say I'm the account manager, and you'll have either like a client manager in there as well, perhaps. I think Jeff's in most of them, so our director as well, who kind of will catch a lot of these things too. But we'll have our list of things we know about your business from what you've told us, but then also we'll have looked in your account, have a load of questions for you, and we're pretty experienced at the types of questions to ask now, so we'll just go through those. So that's how we find out a lot of stuff about your business early, the history of your AdWords account, why you've made certain changes, what the process is with your website, what kind of visitors you prefer, what makes you the most money. We'll look through your analytics. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And then kind of on the other hand, so, when we're kind of looking at your data through, while we're managing, we'll have those weekly calls. So that's how we'll be finding out stuff. If there's anything we do and you're like, hey, that's not my business, we want to know about it on your call, but we'll also be asking, hey, does that make sense? Does that work? And then for the competitor side of things as well, there's generally competitor analysis that we'll do. We'll look at the kind of ads they're running. We'll look at their websites. It's a big mixture of those kind of things. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot involved in getting to know the business, getting to know the competitors, understanding that market and that landscape. And I think Sam just encompassed it really well, in that it's a continual process, most certainly. So yeah, well, all right. Those were all the questions we got currently. If anybody's got questions afterwards, there's going to be a slide here in a second with some contact information, but absolutely more than happy to answer more questions afterwards, after you've had a few minutes to marinate on this. And all right, great. So I just want to find out what you all need from me. So obviously I've made it pretty clear I'm a little bit involved in the sales team and Sam's very much on the account side. But that said, it seems like some of you could potentially be in this boat where you're going back to the drawing board and really looking at a different option. So we've actually got some opportunities available, and we've got a poll open for everybody if they want to take part. Just let us know what you're interested in, what we might be able to help with. Maybe it's full-on PPC management, potentially an audit. So you've got a team and you just need to give them some new ideas, and you want our team to give them to them. We've also got a retainer that's a little bit more of some part-time help from our team. You get a block of hours and can kind of boss them around and tell them what to use those hours for, and then they'll help you implement some things. And then, of course, we do have a free solutions blueprint that's available for accounts that are spending more than $20,000 a month. So feel free to reach out to us there. So if you guys want to select either A, B, C, or D, we'll reach out to you accordingly if you are interested in anything. And then likewise, if you're not sure if you're interested, but you are later, you can certainly reach out to me direct. Awesome. So like I said, if you've got more questions, certainly just hit us up via Think PPC. You can go to this URL and actually request a free solutions blueprint. And you can also contact us direct at marketing@hannepinmarketing.com, or you can tweet at Sam and I, Sam Owen PPC, and 1-800-KAYLA. I think that's it, you guys. We're going to let everybody go, and thank you for joining us. We will see you in a week or so. Everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.